Hi everyone, welcome to Ibrox. We are here, Joshua, Barrie and Chris Jack, ahead of Rangers against Hearts in the Scottish Premiership. Chris, Rangers got a good point away to Olympiacos in Greece on Thursday night. Domestically, they haven't always managed to put in the same performance levels as they have in European competition.
Very diplomatic of you, very diplomatic of you there.
Yeah, exactly. Today, they have to win. Aberdeen won comfortably yesterday to put them 12 points ahead of Rangers. Celtic are in action against Kilmarnock as we speak. The Rangers team, I'll try and say it from my memory while you get the bench up, but it is Butler in the goals. James Tavernier comes back in for Dujon Sterling, who is fine after he came off slightly early on Thursday. He makes the bench. I can do it without this, watch me. Suter and Balogun. Liam Balogun comes back in for Robin Proper. Chefty continues at left back. Midfield three of Nico Raskin, Mohamed Diamande and Conor Barron, Václav Černý, Cyril Dessers and Nedim Bayrami. How about that?
I think it's the team that many people expected. I went for Sterling to start at right back rather than Tav, but I don't think it's a massive surprise that the captain comes back in. You'd imagine you would see Dujon Sterling at some point try and get some more minutes under his belt. I think would definitely be a benefit for him.
Yeah.
I'll go through the bench. Dujon Sterling is on the bench. The rest of it is Kelly, Proper, Dowell, Casemiro, Igaman, Hadji, McCausland and Danilo. You have to say four attacking options there, plus Kieran Dowell as a midfielder. It looks fairly
strong Rangers bet, kind of.
Strong game.
When was the last time you said that?
A long time ago. And also a couple of options still to come back in. Also Ridvan, Cortez, Matondo to come back into it. So at some point the manager might actually have decisions to make on who makes the bench rather than who just makes a starting 11. But I think on paper that looks like a strong starting 11. You would back that starting 11 to go and get the job done. And as you said at the top of the show, Rangers, they just have to win today. There's no alternative for them, or we know what the reaction round about this place is going to be in a couple of hours' time if they don't.
Yeah, okay, let's start at right back. James Tavernier was always going to come back in, wasn't he? I mean, it was a big decision. It's the first time he's been dropped since I think ever I can remember, certainly in recent years. The only other time off the top of my head I can remember him being dropped for a big game was when Graham Murray pushed him up a line against Celtic in like 2016, 2017. He was always going to come back in today, wasn't he? There'll be a bit more scrutiny in his performance, but I guess this is the type of game where I think Ibrox, when he's not always, I don't know the Hearts lineup yet, but when he's not always up against an out-and-out winger, maybe that'll suit him a little bit more. Equally, if Hearts play with these kind of narrow inside forwards, then maybe it'll take him into the midfield where he doesn't want to go. He is obviously and was always going to play a part this season, Chris, but I guess the question is when he does come in for games like this that theoretically should suit him a little bit more at home, how does he perform, and how do you see that position today? Because Dujon Sterling, although he came off slightly early, and as we said at the time, believe he's fine and he does make the bench today, he did put in a really good showing, and there is going to be extra scrutiny I think on Tavernier's performance as a result.
There will be, because how many times have we spoken about him over the course of the season? He's been
quite a lot.
He's been the guy that almost every morning briefing we do, every pre-match show, every post-match show, there's comments about Tav's performance or his place in this, not just his place in the team, but his place in the squad, his place at the club. It has been spoken about so much. He does, I think, need not an extended break in terms of being dropped for 6-7 games, but he does need to be handled a bit better than he has been so far this season, and certainly since he has been over the course of his Rangers career. Now, we have seen this. I've seen this guy downturn in his performances, regardless of what he said and his press ahead of Motherwell game about his levels and being physically good to go for 60 games. It's unfair to ask him to do that. It's the wrong thing to ask him to do that. And at some point, Rangers need to know who the successor is going to be. Is that going to be Dujon Sterling? Is it going to be Casemiro? Is it going to be someone that they're going to have to get into the transfer market? That's a question for down the line. Here and now, I think it's wrong to write Tav off. I don't think you can completely say he will never kick a ball for a club again. Clearly, that was not going to be the case. But to say he needs a performance, I think that's accurate. I think he does need to convince people that he can still play a part. So I don't think it's a huge surprise that he's come back in today, but I would be surprised if he sees the 90 minutes. I think if the opportunity comes up, the manager will look to give him a break.
Yeah, midfield three remains kind of as expected, probably Rangers' best options at the moment. I think as well it's a midfield that domestically lacks goals. I don't think Diomande's not really scored. He scored once or twice this season, but he's not scored much at all since the first couple of weeks of his Rangers career. Emphasis on Nadim Barami and Václav Černý, who have, I think, been Rangers' best two performers over the last couple of weeks probably. Barami, I think, quietly coming on to quite a good game to support Cyril Dessers. He made some comments yesterday which provoked conversation online. I think Danilo will get minutes today, but it's probably more likely that he gets those towards the end of the game where he can impact things and where he's perhaps coming onto a defence that's slightly more tired. What did you make of Dessers' comments first, the reaction to them? And secondly, probably no real surprise that he keeps that place with Danilo and Igaman both fresh to come off the bench.
I think his comments were always going to, as you say, spark a bit of reaction. Yeah. But I think his point does stand. If his goal scoring was better, if his all round game was better, he wouldn't be at Rangers. Every player is at this club right now because they're at a certain level. Now the fans, understandably and rightly, don't want to hear it. Just like they don't want to hear the club being spoken about as a stepping stone to the Premier League or a move elsewhere. They don't want players to say, well, actually, sometimes I'm good, sometimes I'm bad. If I was any better, then, well, your club's not quite good enough for me. Yeah. But I think his point does stand, maybe perhaps taking across in the right way. He's a very, very difficult guy to figure out, or a difficult player to figure out as a guy. He's great for us, answers anything. He's been really good to deal with from a press perspective. I think he's a likeable big guy, type of guy you would want to do well, but there are flaws there, and there are obvious flaws to his game. And one of the points I made in an interview that I wrote off of that, I said it's not about it's the focus still on what he doesn't do rather than what he does do. Yeah. But there are more things that he doesn't do that are annoying people than things that he does do that are pleasing people right now.
It's the type of comment that you see if he'd scored one instead of two and he'd only missed one of those chances instead of two, it would have been fine. But he didn't on the night, which I guess which is what sparked that debate. But anyway, the Hearts team, you've got it in front of me, so I will read it out. Gordon Kent, Oyugok, Shanklin, Devlin, Rolls, Spittle, Forrest, Boateng, Penrith and Vargas, pretty much as expected from Hearts, who have had a mixed start under Neil Critchley, but I think they look... without maybe having a new manager bounce in terms of results, and I think kind of unfortunate to not get a result by all accounts in Europe in midweek, lacked a little bit of incision in the final third against obviously a Bundesliga outfit. They are an improved team from a couple of months ago, a month ago. Rangers drew 0-0 against them at the start of the season in an entirely unforgettable game. A lot depends for me today on how Hearts come out, because they'll be tired as well from Thursday night. We know that Rangers tend to not really play well after they've played on a Thursday night, Chris. If Hearts go for the game a little bit more and leave space, I think it suits Rangers better, and they'll probably be tempted to go for the game a little bit more because Rangers' domestic form hasn't been brilliant this season. Is that how you see it as well? Because we've seen these games before after a Thursday night where a team comes and sits in and Rangers don't really have the ideas, the energy to break them down, the domestic game after a European game.
I think off the top of my head, I think the record is actually okay after European games. I'm sure I checked that and I wrote it last week. It
doesn't feel like it.
It doesn't feel like it. I was actually surprised, but when I checked, I was surprised. I don't think they've performance-wise, it's not been that great. But I think results-wise, they have actually responded to the European games okay this season. It's a very different. The manager always says it's a different game. He was asked a couple of weeks ago why he is poor against Kilmarnock, but then as good as you were against Bucharest. And he says, it's a different game, different occasion, different setup. All these things also come into it. But I think the fans are right to expect a higher level of performance. Having seen what the team was able to do on Thursday night, it would be a very Clermont Rangers thing to do, to come back here and be fairly dreadful this afternoon. Fingers crossed that's not the case, because I say they do at some point have to start building a bit of momentum, not just in terms of results but in terms of performances. Need to give the crowd here something to actually buy into, and heading into the latest of these international breaks, thankfully this is the last one of the year. We could really do with a bit more positivity in the air and people actually being pleased rather than going into it and questions over the manager, questions over certain players. We don't need that again.
Yeah, well, I think Rangers as a club certainly feel that way. We shall see. Big pressure on this game because Rangers need to not fall into double digits behind in the Scottish Premiership. A more optimistic view might suggest they're at home. They should win this game. We shall see. You can join us after the game as well. Stay up to date with the Rangers review throughout the game and after for all the best analysis of what goes on here at Ibrox. And until then, we'll join you later. Thanks for watching.